All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Megan McGilvery, and I'm one of the co-presidents of Queens for Paws, alongside Hannah Zandy. So we would like to welcome everyone here today, and thank you all for attending. We're joined this evening by a guest speaker who is an RCMP veteran with PTSD, and he is accompanied by a service dog, Sophie. He'll be speaking on his personal experiences and sharing his knowledge with us to kind of give us some perspective on why we do what we do here at Queens for Paws. So first, I'll deliver a very brief presentation on PTSD to get everyone kind of comfortable with what he'll be talking about. Then I'll give the floor over to our real expert. All right. All right, so post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is one of those disabilities that doesn't have any visible physical impairments like others that would use a cane, a wheelchair, or those kind of things that are an extension of their body that help them with mobility and things like that. Here we go. So definition, so post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a mental health condition that's triggered by a traumatic event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. So some symptoms of this, so flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, uncontrollable thoughts about the event are some of those symptoms. So getting effective treatment after PTSD symptoms develop can be critical to reduce symptoms and improve function. So a form of treatment is the use of trained service dogs to assist people who suffer from PTSD as they speed up recovery and help reduce reliance on medication. So some things service dogs do, they promote integration and activity, they suppress hypervigilance, and they provide reality affirmation and redirection. So to start off with promoting integration and activity, so the responsibility for the well-being of another and their consistent care helps a person with these issues build a brighter future. The dogs are active animals and they need to get out and be exercised. So this forces the individual to be part of that. And also the care of the dog also brings routine back into their life. So suppress hypervigilance. So hypervigilance creates constant tension and paranoia. So individuals often require personal space, some more personal space than the average person. So the dogs are trained to create a physical barrier that kind of keeps the public at a comfortable distance. And finally, providing reality affirmation and redirection. So the dogs are trained to recognize the individual's anxious behavior and physically redirect them to more positive activities, such as petting the dog. So in addition, for those experiencing nightmares or flashbacks, the dogs can provide vitally important reality affirmation with things such as their persistent nudges and their calm disposition. So it is my great pleasure to now introduce our guest speaker, Jim Butler. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you.
Take the floor.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone. I can't see everybody on the screen, but I can see some people. So I'm very happy to be here. I think that every opportunity that I get to explain how my dog helps me makes the general population and the world a little more understanding to people with service dogs. So as you can see, Sophie's on my lap here, and she'll probably remain here for the entire session. She's very astute to my my needs, and is never more than a foot or two away from me. So that's day and night. So yeah, she's very loyal. So what I thought I would do is I'm just going to go over what I'm going to cover tonight, and so everybody knows what's coming down the pipe, and so that there'll be no surprises to this. So the first thing I want to talk about are questions. If you have a question, I would appreciate if you wait till the end of the presentation, unless you feel that there's something that is imminently important to discuss while we're on a specific topic that you don't want to lose that thought. So, but we will have time at the end for as many questions as you wish. I'm under no time constraints whatsoever. So, so first of all, the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about myself a little bit and my career and how I was diagnosed and what caused me to be diagnosed with PTSD. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how I acquired Sophie, and I'm going to talk about the training that was required for the dog and me, and some of the costs that were associated with that. I'm going to talk about how Sophie helps me. As you can see, it's pretty apparent what she does. I'm going to talk about some of my experiences, both positive and negative, and I'm happy to say that the majority of my experiences have been very positive, very, very positive. So, and then I'm going to talk about the how my life has changed after I acquired Sophie. And then we'll open it up to questions. So, okay. A little bit about myself. I was an RCMP officer for 30 years. I worked about 10 years in uniform and 20 years working in a specialized field of drug enforcement and money laundering on the international level. So throughout my career, I was exposed to a lot of trauma and a lot of life and death situations, especially when I worked in a specialized field. I worked all over the world, so I was involved with a lot of narco terrorism and violence in the drug world and dealing with organized crime and drug cartels. So I've seen my fair share of trauma and experienced some very troubling life and death situations. So I retired from the RCMP in 1999 and took a job as a teacher of police studies at St. Lawrence College in Kingston. And I worked there for several years, and my health deteriorated very quickly after I started teaching there. And I didn't realize what my problem was until one of my daughters identified to me that I wasn't actually acting myself anymore. So I went to the doctor. I had a 15-minute appointment to see what was the matter with me. And the appointment lasted 3.5 hours. And thankfully, the doctor had just finished his internship at CFB Trenton and was very familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder. So even though I knew about post-traumatic stress and what it did to first responders and military veterans, it wasn't on my radar. So I was extremely shocked about that. That was in 2014 that I was diagnosed. And at that point, I was literally in a shell. I wouldn't go outside. I wouldn't go to the store. I didn't want to associate with my friends. I had no social life. I basically turned into a couch potato. I was resorting to alcohol. That's one of the things that people do with PTSD to alleviate some of the pain. But unfortunately, it's a short-term solution, and it just exacerbates the problem in the end. So when I was diagnosed in 2014, I didn't know a lot about PTSD, and it was very confusing. And the medical field didn't give me a lot of help. And I went through many, many therapists. And in 2015, I was introduced to a therapist who's here tonight, Dr. Bonnie Seidman. And her daughter, Ariel, is here, I know, too. And she was the one that Dr. Seidman was the one that introduced me to therapy that started to turn my life around. And I also attribute me having a service dog to Bonnie as well. She after a period of time when I was in therapy with her, she said, you know, Jim, I think you would really benefit from a service dog. I was in a very dark place. I had suicidal thoughts. I was basically a non-functioning adult. So I was able to acquire Sophie. And so how I acquired her was I contacted an organization in Ottawa called Amadeus. And Amadeus is a service dog organization very similar to Kingston Four Paws. And at the time, they were providing support for first responders and veterans to acquire service dogs. And there were two options that you had. You could either wait for 2 years and get a fully trained service dog, or you could train your own service dog once the dog was approved by the organization. So I opted for the latter of the two options, simply because the wait time for a dog was 2 to 3 years at that time, and I didn't think I was going to make it for 2 or 3 years. I figured I would probably take my own life before. I just was I was full of despair, and I had no hope left. So anyway, I acquired Sophie from a local handler, or a local breeder here in the Kingston area. She's a cross between a wolfhound and a standard poodle, and she is an extremely loyal dog. And we bonded almost instantly. So so I was responsible for training her myself. And what the organization did was they provided me with training guidelines, and I was to work on each module of the training guide. And once I completed the prescribed training, I would go to Ottawa, and the organization there would certify me as being capable of doing that particular task. So things like going into grocery stores, going into restaurants, going to Tim Hortons for coffee, making sure that your dog was mindful and, you know, not trying to eat donuts off somebody's table or bark or react adversely towards anybody else that was in the restaurant or the facility at the time. The same thing with stores. Like we would go into grocery stores, and I would walk her by the meat counter and all those kinds of things. And there was a methodology to training her to not be distracted by anything that a dog would normally be distracted by. So kind of differentiates her from being just a pet. And I had to go to Ottawa for a few different things. They facilitated getting on an aircraft. So I went to the Ottawa airport, and they arranged for me to aboard an aircraft with Sophie, because there's all kinds of different sounds and things like that go on in the airport that she's not familiar with. We practiced going through security and things like that. And so the training program was 14 months in duration. And Sophie, I'm proud to say, graduated after 9 months. She was on the fast track, and she's the quickest dog to graduate from the program. So yeah, I'm quite proud of her. So so that was 5 years ago. So she's been certified for 5 years now. The certification lasts for 4 years. So last year I had to get her recertified. So basically it's essentially going through the tests again to make sure that she is capable of responding appropriately in public settings, and she doesn't disturb anybody else or cause a disturbance or or ruckus or anything like that. So yeah, so that's a little bit about the how I acquired her. The certification. This is something that I wanted to show you. I'm not now with Amadeus. I'm with another organization run by two ladies that are actually military veterans. And one of the problems that we experience as service dog owners is people that purport to have service dogs when they're not. And it gives us all a bad name. And I've had lots of anecdotal stories from restaurant owners and things like that that have had, allowed people into their restaurant because of, the customer claiming that the dog was a service dog, and then, having disastrous consequences as a result of that. So the organization I'm with now is called K9er. And what they have done, and I think that some other organizations are starting to do this as well, is I'm going to hold this up here. This is Sophie's card, and if you can see on the bottom corner, there's a place where you can scan. I'm not sure what you call it, but I was going to call it a barcode. But anyway, anybody can scan that. That obviously has a scanner or a phone that has the app on it. And it'll give you all the information about her being a legitimate service dog, information about me, information about her her immunization, when she was last certified, and all the information about her. So there's no question, once they scan that card, they know exactly that they're dealing with a bona fide service dog and a handler. So a lot of restaurants and other what's the word I'm looking for? The businesses have kind of figured out for themselves whether or not the dog is legitimate, just by the way the dog acts. I've only been asked once to actually have the barcode scan, and that was at the Costco store in Kingston here. And the lady scanned the card. And she goes, "Oh yeah, okay, great." And I'll tell you what happens is Sophie gets recognized around the community. I live just north of Lansdowne, and most of my activities are in Kingston. So Sophie's recognized by all the local stores now. I can walk down Princess Street and people will say, "Oh yeah." They don't remember me, but they remember the dog. So, and the same with flying. Like I have a daughter that lives in Manitoba, and I usually fly WestJet, and all the people at WestJet know Sophie as soon as she shows up. They don't know me, but they know Sophie. So it's actually quite nice. So for me, the costs associated with obtaining Sophie, I had to actually purchase the dog myself. So the dog cost me $2,000. I was able to claim that as a taxable benefit, but I was never reimbursed for the money, for the $2,000. Now, what I didn't have to pay for is similar to what people don't have to pay for in Kingston Four Paws, is they don't have to pay for the training. So, and I believe that in Kingston Four Paws, they don't pay for the dog either. However, the conundrum is that when you don't pay for the dog continues to be owned by the organization and can be called back by the organization at any time. Not that they would use that as anything against you, but the dog is technically not yours. She's gonna get down now, she's getting warm. So the other cost that people have to be aware of, it's roughly about $5,000 a year for veterinary bills, and because she has to be, I go to the vet with her once a month for a checkup, and my vet actually is a personal friend of mine, so she actually gives me quite a discount because she's a service dog. So that's her way to pay forward. Much like you folks are all doing with four pauses, you're paying it forward and helping someone else out. So yeah, so those are the cost experience to that. How does Sophie help me? I'm just going to adjust this now that she's gone. So the main thing that Sophie does for me is I suffer from a lot of flashbacks and nightmares as a result of my career. And Sophie's trained to wake me up when I have a nightmare. So before I had Sophie, on 2 occasions, my wife woke me up. On one occasion, I was choking her. And on another occasion, I was trying to hit her in the back of the head with my fist. I'm talking about my wife, not my dog. So it was, and my wife is a fairly petite woman, and I was overly concerned that I was going to hurt her. So it was extremely important to me that I get those nightmares under control. So what happens now when I have a nightmare is Sophie sleeps right beside me, not on the bed, but right beside the bed. And if she senses that I'm stirring, because she's very astute to my, and now she's coming back up again. She's very astute to my my level of anxiety. So she'll get her nose right under my chin, and she'll go like this until I pat her on the head and tell her it's okay, and then she'll lay back down again. So as I'm sure some of you have experienced, when you have a nightmare, it's really hard to wake up from it. And sometimes when you wake up, you're not even sure you are awake, and you have a hard time convincing yourself that it was a nightmare and it wasn't reality. So Sophie is very good at doing that for me. So she grounds me almost immediately when she wakes me up like that. And the other things that she does, Megan, you touched on basically in your slide presentation. She's trained to keep me safe. So she acts as a barrier. Let's say, for example, in Costco. Well, I'll tell you a story. When I was first diagnosed, I couldn't even go to the village grocery store to pick up a loaf of bread for my wife or get anything, because I had so much anxiety. I was scared to go out. I had no self-confidence. I thought everybody was looking at me. I thought, I knew I was injured, but I felt like I was being stared at. So when I got Sophie, I can tell you now, I'm able to go to Costco by myself. It's just absolutely amazing. It's like lifting a 10-ton weight off my chest. I have no fear of going anywhere with Sophie. She goes everywhere with me. So it's an absolute amazing partnership. And I can't, it's really hard for me to put into words how beneficial Sophie is for me, but I can tell you that she is probably the greatest asset that I've come across with respect to my recovery from post-traumatic stress disorder. And if it wasn't for her, I would probably not be here today. I would have probably taken my own life. I was so desperate and in so much despair. So, that's why I want to thank Dr. Bonnie Stephen from the bottom of my heart for what she did for me, because, it's service dogs save lives. There's absolutely no question. Everybody knows about service dogs for, like CNI dogs for blind people, but it pretty much ends at that. So it's absolutely amazing how skilled dogs are and how astute they are to assist human beings. I met a girl in Florida at the airport that had a service dog for um, insomnia. And she was telling me that she had insomnia so bad that she could actually be walking across the street and fall asleep. Or sorry, narcolepsy, not insomnia. So so she said, I get absolutely no warning. I can be walking across the street and all of it, the next thing I remember, I'll be waking up laying on the pavement with no warning. And her dog gave her 30 to 45 seconds of warning. So the dog could sense something that the person couldn't even sense themselves. So and that's exactly what Sophie does for me. She can sense things. She can tell when I'm having a bad day when I don't even know I'm having a bad day. And when she will come and rub up against me, and I know the closer she is to me in distance relates to how I'm feeling without even thinking about it. So she's pretty calm right now because she's just sitting on the couch here beside me. So, but as you can see, she doesn't get very far away from me. So yeah, so that's how she helps me. So experiences, what I've had, positive and negative. Because my injury is not apparent, I look sort of like a normal human being. Most people will not understand why I have a service dog. So a lot of the comments I get are things like, "Oh, are you training are you training that dog for someone?" And I'll say, "No, the dog is for me." And they'll say, "Oh, okay." And most people will just give a positive reaction, like, "Oh, that's so wonderful," and things like that. And once I feel the person out and realize that they're actually genuinely interested and concerned and want to know more about it, I will flesh out a little bit about what's wrong with me, perhaps, or I'll say that the dog is I've been diagnosed with PTSD, and the dog helps me navigate in the community, and she keeps me safe, and all those kinds of things. And most people are extremely thankful and very appreciative. I've had people. There was one lady at Costco that I ran into in the parking lot. I told her my story, and she started to cry, and she was so happy that she said, that's just a heart-wrenching story, but she said this has such a good ending to it. So those kinds of things make me feel really good too. I've had very few negative experiences, and they seem to be less and less all the time. So I do think that people are getting more educated about service dogs, and people are getting used to seeing dogs in places that they weren't familiar with seeing them before. So it cuts down on a lot of the questions, but I've had the odd person say to me things like, "Well, you don't look sick. What do you need a dog for?" Which is tantamount to you sitting in a doctor's office asking the person next to you in the waiting room why they're there, because they don't look sick. So it's rather disturbing, those kinds of things. But Dr. Seidman actually gave me a good anecdotal solution to that. When I feel the person is becoming very prying and delving into areas that are none of their business, I look them straight in the eye and say, "Don't forget I have a brain injury." And that usually sort of helps them to retreat a little bit and think about what they perhaps want to say next. So yeah, but yeah, most people are extremely happy. People are absolutely amazed on the kinds of things that she can do for me. And when I tell them how I've morphed into someone that wouldn't go out of the house 5 years ago to someone that I've flown on aircraft by myself with Sophie. I've gone on trips. I go shopping with Sophie. I go to all my medical appointments now with Sophie. And before I had Sophie, my wife had to drive me to Kingston to all my appointments because I was afraid to drive, because a lot of the traumas and the horrific things that I saw were as a result of me driving to get there. So it was I had a lot of flashbacks. One of the things I can't do is I have a very difficult time driving on the 401 because I witnessed a lot of or I attended a lot of accident scenes. And on the 401, if you get behind an accident, you're stuck there, you're trapped. Whereas if you drive on highway number 2 or any other 2-lane highway, you can actually turn yourself around and find an alternate route. So just little things like that I've had to change in my world. But other than that, things are pretty much back to normal. Now, there are a few things that, it was hard getting used to at first, always taking a dog somewhere with me. But now it's second nature. It's like brushing my teeth in the morning when I get up. It's just something I do. Like it's part of my routine. When I get myself ready to go out somewhere, I'm also getting Sophie ready to go out. So my experiences have been extremely positive. I do find though that a lot of people are not familiar with service dogs, especially for people that have disabilities that are not visible. So for example, under the Disabilities Act, I fall under the Disabilities Act, and I'm entitled to any privileges that a physically disabled person would have. So example would be using the handicap checkout line at Costco or at the grocery store. I tend not to do that because people have confronted me and said, you're in the handicap line, get out of there. That's not for you. Those kinds of things. So there are things that education needs to catch up a little bit to the times, but other than that, most people are very very sensitive to me having a service dog, or anybody having a service dog for that matter. And so I have very few difficulties in Kingston or anywhere for that matter. One of the problems that you may have heard people from Forpas talking about is that there's no legislation in Canada that is uniform across the country for service dogs. So that's one of the problems with having to with people that have go on the internet and buy a vest that says service dog on it. There's no provincial standard or no federal standard that says that everybody must have one of these cards, or everybody has to have a red vest, or certain, like the vest that I have is red. I'm not sure why they chose that color, but most of them are either red or blue. But unfortunately, it's kind of like, there's no way to positively identify this as a bona fide service dog because there's no standardization. So it's kind of like, anybody could go out and buy a police uniform and wear a police uniform, and then you wouldn't know who's a police officer and who's not a police officer. So that's a problem. So so anyway, I don't know, Megan, if there's anything else I can think of that I can enlighten you on. I've probably brushed over a lot of stuff very quickly, but um, uh, I'm. Oh, one thing I will say is that uh, um, normally speaking, we are trained to not allow our dogs to interact with the public um, for a number of reasons. Because they are working and they're, I mean, animals are easily distracted. But for me, I've trained Sophie so that I will allow her to interact with the public in certain situations. So, for example, if I'm in a store and this just happened a couple of days ago, actually, I was in a store and there was a lady with a couple young children, her children in the grocery store, and so she said to her children, she said, "Oh, look at there's a working service dog. You're not allowed to touch him, but isn't that neat? Look at how this dog helps that gentleman." And so I stopped and I said, I said, "Oh, really appreciate your respectfulness." And Sophie obviously stopped and sat down, and the kids were kind of looking at the dog and thinking, "Oh my goodness, what a cute animal." And I said to the lady, I said, "If you'd like, you can have your children come up and say hello to Sophie because she likes to interact." So she thought that was great. So she let her kids come and they petted Sophie on her head, and Sophie just sat there and enjoyed it. And yeah, so I had a little chat with the kids, and I said, "This is a really special for both you and Sophie. This is kind of like a treat for her to get to talk to people because she's actually working." So yeah, so I never miss an opportunity to educate people, and I think it's the best. Some dog owners that I'm familiar with will say, "Do not touch my dog. Don't go near my dog. Don't distract my dog." And I don't know. For me, it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, especially if you're genuinely interested in what the dog is doing for me, and you're just not there to cause a disturbance. And yeah, so that's been my experience. So I do a lot of volunteer work with an organization called Wounded Warriors Canada, which helps veterans and military veterans and first responders that are dealing with operational stress injuries or PTSD. And Sophie is an integral part of that training. They're usually 5-day retreats all over the Canada. And Sophie, once she's in the room with everybody, I take her vest off, and she absolutely she'll gravitate to the person that has the most anxiety in the room. It's absolutely incredible. And she knows to do that. And so after the first day, when people come, get to know Sophie, they're all eager to interact with her, and she has never made a mistake yet. She'll go in the morning and she'll gravitate over to somebody, and the person will say, "Oh my goodness, Jim, I really had a bad night last night. I almost packed up my car and drove home. I didn't want to be here. I had so much anxiety, but Sophie came over and made my day a lot better." So those kinds of things. So that's what we do. So that's how I pay it forward as well. So, and doing talks like this that I love to do. So anyway, Megan, I think I can open it up to questions now. Whatever.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, we can allow everyone to ask whatever questions they've been holding on to. I do have one, so I can start.
Yeah.
Just kind of touching on there being a lack of standard regulations for service dogs. When we had chatted on the phone, you had mentioned your experience with different airlines.
Yes.
Could you mention that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. So in Canada, because of the Disabilities Act, airlines are required to provide me a space for my dog free of charge. So under the Disabilities Act, I am not to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, I can't be restricted in like that. I can't be disallowed from going anywhere on a plane or in a restaurant. So in other words, when I go into a restaurant, they can't say, oh, I'm going to sit you at the back so nobody can see you. They're not allowed to do things like that. So discriminate. That's what I was looking. That's the word I was looking for. So they're not allowed to discriminate. Because of Sophie's size, the first time we flew, I had to talk to the special booking people, and they wanted all of Sophie's measurements. So they wanted her weight, her height to the top of her back, and the distance from the base of her tail to the tip of her nose. And as a result of that, they determined that she is too big to sit underneath my seat, and she gets her own seat. On an aircraft, she'll get a seat just like me. So, and they're very good that way. Now, unfortunately, as I was telling Megan on the phone the other day, international flights are different. On international flights, the carrier is not obligated to give you a seat because they're flying outside of Canada. Therefore, the Disabilities Act in Canada doesn't apply. So now, I've never had a problem yet, but both Air Canada and WestJet have told me that the only time that they will give me a seat if there's one available. So if there's an extra seat available, then they will they'll make room for Sophie. But if not, then I have to actually purchase a seat. So actually, the girl that I met in Florida that was flying back to Ottawa with the service dog that was trained for narcolepsy, which is only one of 3 dogs in the world that are trained for narcolepsy, by the way. Her dog was a Great Dane, so about twice the size of Sophie. And she actually had to buy a first-class seat on Air Canada to allow her dog to fly on the plane, because she said, I can't risk getting to the airport and them telling me that there's no seat available for my dog, because I cannot be without my dog. She's a lifeline for me. So yeah. So does that explain that, Megan?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. So no cost. Matter of fact, Via Rail is the same. So I can travel anywhere on Via Rail, and Sophie gets on. She gets a seat provided to her, and it's not really a big issue on a train. But yeah, they're obligated to provide space, and I must say that the commercial airlines and Via buses, hotels, they're extremely accommodating. So they do, they go above and beyond. So yeah, good question, Megan. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions or tips for how, like, us and the general public who maybe doesn't know so much about service dogs, and especially service dogs with non-visible disabilities, can learn more or educate themselves better?
Wow, that's a tough one. Well, I think, word of mouth seems to be the best avenue right now, for me anyway. Over the past 5 years, I've experienced a huge turn in the number of people that don't question service dogs for any reason. So 5 years ago, when I was going to your mom's office down at LaSalle Muse, sometimes people would say to me, dogs aren't allowed in here. And, I would say, well, she's a service dog. And they'd look at me like, oh, what do you mean a service dog? It's like, but I have not had comments like that in at least a couple of years now. So definitely people are becoming more familiar. You know, it's not uncommon to see a service dog at Costco, for example. You know, quite often I'll see another service dog there, or somebody in there training a service dog. Well, so I was going to say something too. Oh, the other thing, I'm a season ticket holder for the Kingston Frontenacs, and the Frontenacs organization gives Sophie a seat for free. So yeah, so they're very accommodating. They allow me to go in and out of the building to let Sophie go to the bathroom. And you know, if you've ever been to the arena, you know that there's a no double entry policy. So once you're in the arena for the game, you cannot leave unless you go into a roped off area where the smokers are. So, but they've made an exception for me. So there's lots of things happening, Ariel, that tell me that people are becoming more and more educated. So now, let's say, for example, let's say there's 20 people here tonight. Hopefully you have all at least gained a little bit of information that you didn't know before. And you're going to take that out and spread it to your friends. And then your friends are going to spread it out. So it's really, I think that's working as good as anything. The other thing that I think would help is some standardized legislation where people, you know, the first thing is, I don't have anything other than this card to tell anybody that Sophie's a bona fide and certified service dog. So if I were somebody running a business that was very unfamiliar with service dogs, I really wouldn't know whether I should accept this or not. So that would really help, is that, you know, if you have an accredited organization that's sanctioned by some level of government, either provincial or federal, it would definitely pave the way for more opportunities and a much better understanding by the public. But I think for all intents and purposes, the public are very understanding once they know. You know, I've had very few adverse comments. Sometimes people treat you like a you know, a street person. So, you know how and I'm sure you've all experienced this, when there's somebody sitting on Princess Street with a coffee cup and sitting on the sidewalk with a coffee cup in their hand and they're begging for money. Most people will not make eye contact with them, right? They'll, you know, some people will even cross the street. And that's how some people treat me with a service dog, is that they're not sure what to do, so they just avoid me at all costs. So, but you know, if you've ever gone up to a street person and thrown $1 in their cup and talked to them, you'll know that, you know, they're very friendly people. So, and having said that, they all know Sophie. I always carry a pocket full of change, and I like to, you know, give people some money for coffee and things like that. And none of them remember my name, but they all remember Sophie. Oh, hi, Sophie. How's Sophie today? You know, so yeah. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Ariel.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Jim, I thought I might just chime in here. I'm Sue Marcos. I'm from Kingston Four Paws Service Dogs. And first of all,
Yes.
I want to thank you for your service and for all the work that you have done to keep us safe here. And I want to thank you for sharing your story and your personal experience, because I'm sure that's not always easy for you to share what your experience is. So thank you for helping all of us to increase the awareness of the benefits that these dogs can provide.
I can tell you, if this were 5 years ago, I definitely would have declined.
I can imagine. I can certainly imagine. And I think just to kind of chime into Ariel's question about increasing the awareness, and I want to thank everybody here today for joining, because I think all of these these types of sessions and this information sharing and all the work that Queens for Paws is doing, especially with, sorry, Megan and Hannah, the younger generation, is certainly increasing awareness around our young people and our young adults in the community.
Yeah.
We too have noticed a huge difference, as you mentioned, Jim, about just the social awareness of service dogs and the invisible disabilities, the hidden disabilities that many people face,
Yeah.
and the benefits that these dogs can provide, and life-changing, giving people their life and their ability to experience life again. And the more and more that dogs are out and about and people are aware of what function they serve and that they are working dogs. And yes, I have fostered 2 puppies in training, and I know exactly the experiences and the comments that you're referring to, Jim, of some are ultimately supportive, and the businesses, especially in Kingston and around the community, are completely welcoming, but there's also the odd individual out of sheer unawareness of what the dogs do and what the difference they are. It's not um, the recipients, people, individuals like Jim are not walking around with the dog because they like to keep their pet with them all day. These are disability assistant devices. These are working dogs that are providing life-saving changes for the individuals that they work for. So yes, I agree. We agree that the legislation in Canada needs to be improved. There are steps that have been, things that have been changing over the years, but we're not there yet. There is no official recognition of a certified service dog. The Disabilities Act recognizes the individual with the disability, but not the dog itself. So, we believe that needs to change because, as we all know, and Jim alluded to, anyone can buy a service dog jacket off Amazon and profess, but that the dog is trained. But as he also indicated earlier, you can tell very quickly the difference between a trained service animal and an untrained service animal as soon as they go into a business or establishment. Quite quickly, you'll see them in the cat mall, in the cat center, quite quickly. Just walk around the food court. But it would be very nice that we would have some standardizations. There are, there's Assisted Dogs International, which provides standards of training, and the Megan Foundation that provides training guidelines, which most of the school boards adhere to, but it's certainly not widespread amongst the community. So, so I thank everybody. We thank everybody for all of their work to increase the awareness and to help educate the public on what these dogs do. So I just wanted to chime in there and thank you both and Queens for Paws for having these sessions.
Well, thanks, Sue. I really appreciate your very kind comments, and yeah, they're not taken lightly by me. Sophie definitely has changed my life. And your comments actually reminded me of something I wanted to mention that my wife and I were talking about before I come on here, and I think it was I don't know if it was you or not, but anyway. Now I can't remember who it was, but it is the difference between a therapy dog and a service dog. I think it's important to note that a lot of people that go out and get these service dog vests actually have animals that are therapy dogs or therapy animals, but they're not service dogs. And so the question arises, what's the difference? Well, the difference basically is that service dogs are allowed access to anywhere that I want to go, obviously within reason. If I got to go swimming in a hotel pool, I'm probably not going to be able to take my dog. But therapy dogs are not. So they're not allowed to. They're disallowed in places like restaurants or grocery stores where health inspection is concerned about things like that. So And the other general rule is that, well, in Canada anyway, is that there's no certification for therapy dogs. So you can go down to the local pet store and buy a budgie bird tomorrow and tell everybody it's your therapy budgie bird. And nobody will be any the wiser. But unfortunately, you don't have the ability to take that dog or take that bird wherever you go. And the airlines have had a big problem with that. I can tell you, because every time I fly, the station agent, who now, well, like I said, they know Sophie, but they don't remember me. But they always tell me anecdotal stories about how people were trying to get animals on. The most ridiculous one was that there was a lady in Toronto that tried to get a miniature pony on as a therapy pony. So I can't imagine flying on a 737 with a miniature pony. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and I can just add to that, Jim. There's essentially 3 classifications of support animals in Canada. Emotional support animals, which receive no training. They're really essentially pets that provide emotional support, but I don't know any pet that doesn't provide its own emotional support, to be quite honest. And therapy dogs are trained animals, but they're not trained. A service dog is a dog that is specifically trained for one individual and to provide specific skills and specific supports. So by law, under AODA, the Ontario Access Ontario Disabilities Act, specifies that the 2 questions that any establishment can ask somebody regarding a service dog is, do you have a medical need for a service dog? In Jim's example with his PTSD, and what services, what skills does that dog provide for you? Because a service dog is specifically trained to provide specific skills and supports for the person with the disability. Therapy dogs and emotional support animals do not have that training for that one-on-one team.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. That's great. Yeah. And I might add as well that from my perspective, the province in Canada that has done the best job so far in sort of fleshing out some legislation for service dogs is British Columbia. So if you're interested, go on to the web and search BC service dog legislation, and I think they have a really good baseline, something that every province can work off of.
I just have a quick question, kind of more specific to Sophie's breed. So Kingston proposed they use labs and poodles. You said she was a wolfhound and a poodle? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a particular reason that they use that breed?
No, not necessarily, but I was actually the first person to have this breed as a service dog. And the breeder, when I got her, told me that wolfhounds are a very loyal dog. They're almost like a one-person dog. So the obstacle of getting the dog to react just to you is, it almost comes naturally to this breed. So, but wolfhounds unfortunately only have a lifespan of 6 to 8 years. But when they cross them with poodles, there's 2 advantages. 3 really. Poodles are very smart, same as wolfhounds, and they're hypoallergenic, and the lifespan increases to 12 to 14 years.
I see. Yeah. Huh.
I just want to, can I add something?
Yeah, my wife wants to say something here.
Hi, I'm just chiming in. The other reason that my husband, hi, I'm Rose, by the way, Jim's wife. The other reason my husband found Sophie, it was kind of a very serendipitous, because he wanted, when he realized he needed a service dog, he also wanted to have a dog that would be his own, that he wouldn't have to give up maybe, years later. And so, and he also wanted to choose the dog himself if possible and train it himself. So that was what Adamaeus had specified he could do. So then we kind of went looking for breeds that we thought we wanted, and we actually got Sophie by chance. She's almost like a rescue. So maybe I'll let Jim explain that to you and how we came by her, because it was really by chance.
Yeah.
More than anything. Yeah. But she's worked out beautifully. So yeah.
Yeah. So the breeder actually just lives down the road from me about a mile and about 2 miles. So I went down to meet her one Saturday and put my name in for a dog. And I was actually putting my name in for a golden doodle or a Bernedoodle. And the Sophie happened to be there. The litter that I was going to be selecting from wasn't born yet, but there was another litter there that she said, well, come on down and you can at least look at the dogs and see kind of like what you're going to get. Well, Sophie was there. She was about 4 months old, and she was in a pen by herself. And as soon as I walked into the barn where the kennels were, Sophie immediately was attracted to me. And Lynn said, wow, that's really strange, because she doesn't normally, get friendly with people other than her owner. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, unfortunately, that she's not available. I didn't really know the story. So anyway, I had my conversation with Lynn, and I left. And about a week later, she called me and she says, Jim, you remember that dog that really took to you at the barn the other day? And I said, yes. Sophie. She goes, yeah. She said, well, here's the story on Sophie. Sophie is a dog that I was going to keep for breeding purposes. And I had arranged to give the dog to a lady who was going to have her as a therapy dog. And when I was going to breed her twice. So the deal was that she gave this lady the dog for free on the pretext that when she wanted to breed the dog, the lady would bring the dog back to Lynn. They would have the puppies, and then the lady would have the dog back again. But unfortunately, the lady had some serious mental problems, trying to commit suicide. And so she spent a lot of time in the hospital. And finally, Lynn, the breeder, said to her, she said, look, she said, I don't think that Sophie's going to work out for you. Like, she needs to be looked after, and she's very confused because she's back here in the barn more often than she's with you. So she says, I've decided that I think she would be a good service dog for you, because she really demonstrated that she likes you. There's a bond between you two already, and I will give up my rights to breeding her if you would like her as a service dog. And I said, yeah, okay. So I said, well, I want my wife to meet her first, because I said, she is going to be living in our home, and I want us both to be comfortable with the dog. So I said, I'm going to go home, and I'll send my wife down to meet her and see what she says. So my wife went down and immediately fell in love with the dog, and they laid on the floor of the barn, and my wife started crying, and she says, Lynn says, do you want to see the puppies that you could get? And she said, no, Sophie's our dog. And so that's how we brought her home. And Rose brought her home that day, and she never left. So, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's meant to be. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim. I was just wondering about how you mentioned that, like, initially after your diagnosis, you didn't find that the medical field was very helpful. And I was just
Yeah.
wondering if that was in terms of getting you connected with a therapist or other resources, or how your family doctor kind of fell short in helping you effectively.
Yeah, a little bit of both, actually. My family doctor was helpful in so much as that he was very in tune with what post-traumatic stress disorder was all about. He was very familiar with it. So I was thankful for that piece of it. But unfortunately, the way our system works is that he didn't have a lot of time to spend with me. And so he did refer me to a therapist. And he prescribed a bunch of drugs for me. And at one point, I was on 12 different medications. And as you can imagine, or maybe you can't, but the effects of one on another were just incredible. So there was a lot of side effects, sleeplessness. I'm sure that some of the drugs enhanced the flashbacks. And of course, I was going to this therapist, and I'd never been to a therapist before, so I didn't know how to judge them, whether or not they were a good therapist or a bad therapist. And I went through about three therapists that thankfully the first one just kind of said, I think you're above my pay scale. I don't know what to do for you. And I said, well, what recommendations you have? And she goes, well, you need to find another therapist. I said, well, how do I go about that? And it was like, well, you're kind of on your own. Like, well, go on the internet, do this, do that. Talk to your family doctor. And none of those resources really worked very well. But I eventually did find another therapist, and I went to her for about a year. And then she said to me, I don't think I can get you any further. You're above my level of competence. I need to refer you to somebody. And that's when she referred me to my angel Bonnie, who I credit with saving my life. So yeah, it was, and I can tell you that my 12 medications are now down to one as a result of my service dog. And I do use medical cannabis to sleep at night. I'm not a smoker, so I use the oil. I find it is very helpful. But yeah, pharmaceuticals, they just kept throwing pharmaceuticals at me. I can't sleep. Well, take this pill to sleep. I feel sluggish in the morning. Well, take this pill to get going in the morning again. And I don't have an appetite. I have headaches. I have this. I have that. It was like I think the medication, the pharmaceuticals I was on, was probably as much of a problem as my disorder, my injury was, and coupled with the fact that I was drinking heavily. I remember, I believe it was Bonnie told me, she said, there are two things that people with PTSD resort to lessen the pain, and those are alcohol and drugs. And I said, well, I worked in drug enforcement my whole life, so I'm pretty sure I'm not going to abuse illicit narcotics, but I am heavily involved in abusing alcohol. So I quit drinking completely. So as well. So there was a lot of challenges for me, but the system is not really designed to assist people with PTSD, especially when it was at a time of my life when I was the least capable of standing up and fighting for myself, that I was in this predicament, and they just kept throwing drugs at it. And matter of fact, I called the RCMP medical division, and they told me that unfortunately they couldn't help me because I was retired and they were not responsible for me anymore. And I said, really? I said, that's pretty sad. I said, I served my country for 30 years. And that's what you're telling me now? That she said, well, unfortunately, the guy I talked to said, you're just one of those cases that falls through the cracks. So that's really helpful. So, yeah. Anyways, that answer your question, Miriam?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for coming and talking to us. It's been super informative. I was just wondering, you mentioned that obviously you trained Sophie yourself and she did like amazingly well with the training and finished early. What do you think that had an impact on your bond with her, being able to train her yourself? Are you like really glad that you went down that route, or I'm just wondering your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have anything to compare it to, Molly, but definitely I felt that I was creating a bond with Sophie every day I worked with her. So, and I worked very diligently, like every day. You know, they would Amadeus would give me a module and say, okay, you should have this finished, you know, reasonably within a month. And oftentimes I would have the task conquered in 2 weeks. And I would call up the handler and say, okay, now Sophie, you can do this. Okay, well, we'll schedule an appointment. We'll go up and get her certified in that area. So yeah. So yeah, I truly believe that for me anyway, it created a bond, and it also allowed me to get 2 years of my life back that I wouldn't have had back because I've been sitting, basically spinning my wheels, waiting for my dog to arrive. So yeah, I like the method I used. Now, having said that, some of the people I know that have service dogs that did it the same way found it extremely stressful because they couldn't allot the necessary time each day because of their condition to train their dogs. So I live in the country, I live on a lake, so it was very conducive to me working one-on-one with Sophie with virtually no distractions. So it was yeah, it was a perfect fit for me. I'm not saying that everybody would. Now I've had dogs most of my life too, so it's not that I'm not familiar with dogs, but I was never one to train dogs to the extent I trained Sophie. Like, you know, I would have them somewhat disciplined, but certainly not to any degree like Sophie. So yeah, but I recognize that some people just can't. They can't do that. So, but anybody that's looking for a service dog that thinks they're able to allot the necessary time to do it themselves, I strongly recommend it.
I have a comment.
My angel has a question.
A comment, actually, because not everybody's able to train the dog on their own. I just wanted to say that I have a few other clients who they purchased their own dogs as puppies, and there's a trainer out of he works out of Napanee. Do you know him, Jim? Will?
Yes. Yeah.
Canine Will. I think his name is Will Robinson, and he goes by Canine Will, and he does a lot of work training, like helping people train dogs to be service dogs. So sometimes people will bring their dogs to work with him from when they're puppies on, but I think they do have to pay for the training themselves, just like they pay for the dog
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah. I've used Will. Will's a really good resource person. So what happened when I used Will, it was like I got into a situation where I just couldn't get Sophie to grasp a certain concept. So I would just contact him and say, hey, Will, listen, I'm trying to get Sophie to do this. The most difficult thing I had to train her for is waking me up at night. That took me about 4 months to get her, in tune with that. And I called on the Will as a resource, and I know a couple dog handlers in the police, and I talked to a dog handler who was a CBSA customs officer, and a couple RCMP dog trainers as well. So yeah, so everybody that's in the business of having working dogs is more than willing to help, especially when they find out why you want the help. So yeah, thanks for that, Bonnie.
Any further questions at all?
Everybody's being shy.
Last chance. All right. So if there are no further questions or anything to add, I would love to say a huge, huge thank you to you, Jim, for taking the time to share your knowledge with us this evening, and for letting us in on all the things you've experienced, because that'll really help us in continuing to educate everyone that we can. So we've definitely benefited immensely from this evening with you. So thank you for all of this information.
Well, good, and thank you for that. Thank you for those kind words, and I want to tell you, you make my heart swell, each one of you, for doing what you're doing, and raising not only awareness but raising funds to allow people to access service dog. It's you're really paying it forward. So. I'm extremely proud of all of you for that, and I hope at some stage when we're through all this pandemic crap that I can come and meet you all in person, and I'd love for you to all to meet Sophie and see how wonderful she is.
We will definitely look forward to seeing you and Sophie in the future.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. On behalf of everyone, thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you too.
Awesome.
Good night.